If you can't find bags that are both thin and big, such as the trash can liners or dry cleaning bags we suggested, plastic bags from the meat and poultry section or produce section of a grocery store might be the bag of last resort for a hot air balloon. We were able to get some of the bigger of the smaller ones to fly, but they presented particular challenges. This is experimental territory. Smaller hot air balloons are inherently less efficient, and you should understand why that is before you embark on trying to make a small hot air balloon.
Small hot air balloons are less efficient because of the ratio of the surface area to volume of small balloons. Surface area is the actual envelope. It's heavier than air, so it pulls down. Volume is the amount of hot air the envelope can hold. It's lighter than cold air, so it pulls upward. The ratio is the amount of surface area compared to the amount of volume inside. We'll show you, and we'll keep it simple. We know balloons aren't cubes, but we're going to use cube shape for easy math. These red-colored wood blocks represent units of hot air. We'll use giant graph paper to show how much surface area we need to cover the sides and top of cubes. But we won't cover the bottom because hot air balloons are open on the bottom.
It takes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these squares to cover this one cube.
Five squares of heavy to cover 1 cube of light. Hot air gives a ratio of 5 to 1. Let's make a bigger cube, 2 squares across this time.
1, 2, 3, 4 squares, and there's 5 sides, so that's 20 squares. And 4 plus 4 is 8 cubes. It takes 20 squares to cover 8 cubes.
For the second cube, we have a ratio of 20 squares of paper to make 8 cubes of air, which reduces to a ratio of 5 to 2. It's different than the ratio for just 1 cube. So is this trend going to continue if we go bigger, to a cube 3 squares across?
There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 squares in this cube, and there are 5 sides in the cube, so 9 times 5 is 45. There are 9 cubes on each level. There are 3 levels, so that equals 27 cubes in all.
45 squares of heavy paper to cover 27 cubes of light hot air reduces to a ratio of 5 to 3. And if we jump to 5 squares across?
That's 5 times 5 equals 25 squares, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides, which makes 125 squares. Now we don't have enough cubes, but if we were to fill this up with cubes, there would be 125 cubes inside. Remember when it took us 5 squares to cover just 1 cube? Well, now it's going to take us the same number of squares to cover the same number of cubes.
So we've gone from a 5 to 1 ratio of surface area to volume for a small cube to a 1 to 1 ratio for this big cube. That's why big balloons are more efficient at lifting things. They have a smaller ratio of heavy envelope to light hot air. A bigger balloon is not just more efficient in terms of weight. Also, the heat loss from a balloon occurs at the skin. A balloon holds heat better as it gets bigger. The ratio of surface area to volume is an important concept through physics, chemistry, and biology.
Because smaller balloons are less efficient, you'll have to be a fanatic about cutting down on weight. I had to cut the candles to 1/4 of their original size, so the balloon will only be able to stay in the air a minute or 2. Use a fingernail or something to nip off some wax at the end, but not the wick, so you have a wick exposed to light. I also found that I can save weight by cutting the straws in half, or sometimes even thinner, lengthwise. Even with all these drastic measures, you're skating on the edge of possibility. In the meat and poultry section of one supermarket, I found this bag. It seemed to want to go up, but no matter how much weight I tried to shave off, I couldn't get it to fly. 3 candles didn't provide enough lift. 4 candles shriveled and melted the plastic. In addition to the small size, the fact that it's low-density polyethylene might have contributed to the problem. It seemed to have a little more static cling and might have been a little softer than high-density polyethylene. I found this bag also for wrapping meat and poultry, but at a high-end grocery store a few miles from the first. It was a little bigger than the first bag and made of high-density polyethylene. But at first, it melted too. I had a hunch that these 4 inside edges were melting first because there was hot air on both sides of them. I remembered a science demonstration where you could hold a water balloon over an open flame because the cool on the other side of a thin film kept it from burning. If the plastic bag could hold air that was a bit hotter without melting, because cooler air would be on the other side of the film cooling it, that might put it over the threshold and get it in the air. I found a place in the bag where the manufacturer sealed the end by melting. I cut off the seal and opened the end. Then I used clear tape to seal the end again. After lining up the edges exactly, I put half the tape on the bag and half on the table. Then I pulled it up, flipped it over, and folded the tape over to make the seal. Instead of the fancy gathering and bunching at the end, the way it had been, it's just a simple seam. It gave a little more volume. This is the way it was. This is the same bag with the modified end. Most importantly, it would allow outside air to keep the plastic from overheating.
I'm not gonna lie. It's coming towards me, Dad.
My daughter and I got it to fly inside.
That's so cool.
But during the flight, the heat shriveled up and ruined the plastic.
That was a very quick flight. Bam.
So I made another one, and we tried it outside where the air was cooler. That worked perfectly.
Oh, snap.
So it's more to do. It only flies for a short time because of the short candles. You can only fly it outside on a cool day. But if you like challenge and experimenting, you might be able to get this kind of bag to fly. And it was an interesting way to learn about surface area. Contact information and other science projects are at sciencetoymaker.org. Bon voyage, and I am interested to know how your ballooning goes.
Bio, 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 bio.